Chapter 14. The Lion Creeps Tonight. "Good night," Silas said to his father before escaping into his room for what he really wanted to do, investigate the staff and its strange powers. "Night," Dad said, giving him a half-hearted wave from the sofa. "Don't let the bedbugs bite." "Don't you mean the scorpions?" Silas said with an affected shudder. He wore his shoes inside now. "Mom said she found one in the kitchen this afternoon. It snuck inside." "Oh, I know," Dad said. "Trust me, I heard her." He mimicked its scampering and giant stinger stabbing at unsuspecting toes. "Mom said she screamed bloody murder," Silas said, quoting her, though he thought that was a strange saying. "I'm surprised I didn't hear it all the way down by Archie's cabin. I was helping him with the fence." "Yep, I think my ears are still ringing," Dad joked back. "I might have hearing damage." Silas laughed, but then turned serious. "Well, that shouldn't be coming into our house like that. My book says they're venomous. They could sting us, or worse, the baby." "Actually, if you think about it, we're invaders in their territory," Dad reminded him. "Not the other way around. They have more right to be here than we do." "Guess you're right. Still, I don't want them in the house." "Me neither. Soon as I'm feeling better, I'll add bug-proof the cabin to my list." Yet another reminder that his dad was out of commission for the near future, all thanks to Silas and his foolish actions. However, he was determined to make it right. He retreated to his bedroom and shut the door, then waited a few precious minutes to make sure everyone was sleeping. Dad flipped the lights out in the living room. Mom had gone to bed early with George, and he was sleeping for now, which wouldn't last all night. But the coast was clear. Silas shut off the light and grabbed his LED flashlight, another gift from Dad for their trip, along with the camping blanket, the hiking boots, and the other survival stuff. It was all stuffed into a red hiking backpack that was waterproof and had 1,000,000 pockets. Dad had been planning to take him and the twins camping next weekend, but then he got hurt. Silas pushed that thought away. This was his chance to make it better. Darkness fell over his room. Aside from the flashlight's eerie bluish glow, he grabbed the staff, feeling its heft and weight, and crawled back onto his bunk. Dust rose with each movement, clouding the air and dancing like tiny ghosts in the flashlight beam. He dug out his nature books, looking for anything in them that resembled the staff, but there was nothing. Next, he pulled out his phone and searched the internet. He also snapped a picture of the staff and sent it to Jose and Tamara, asking them for help researching it. He waited for a response, but nothing popped up. They were probably asleep already on East Coast time. He sighed, knowing that he wouldn't hear from them until the morning, but he felt a little down. When he first arrived, they texted non-stop, with him snapping interesting pictures of the camp and wildlife and his new friends, Timothy and Natasha. But it had fallen off. He hadn't told them about what happened to his dad. He couldn't bear it and didn't want to dissuade them from visiting by scaring them into deciding it was too dangerous. Or worse, if their parents found out and forbade it. A terrible cry echoed through the campgrounds. Silas jumped and jerked his flashlight to the window, which was cracked open for fresh air. The coyotes were back. The curtains billowed gently in the soft breeze. The fan overhead word, as his parents said they didn't need the AC at night since it cooled down so much. Outside, he thought, he saw pairs of moonlit eyes glowing in the darkness. Were the coyotes creeping around their cabin? Trying to drown out their howls, he quickly jumped up and shut the window. They quieted their mournful cries, but didn't silence them altogether. They were worse than George these days. The baby was finally sleeping for longer stretches at night, not waking every 2 hours. Silas turned to the staff, trying everything to make it react again. He even tied a sheet around his neck like a cape and waved it around like a wizard, yelling, "Hocus pocus, abracadabra, do something already." But that did nothing. Plus, it made him feel silly. He lowered the staff in shame. It had done some weird stuff that afternoon, but he had no idea what triggered it. He tried running his hands over it, begging it to, light up and bring the camp spirit back. But still, nothing unusual happened. It was just a staff after all. He must have been imagining things. Maybe it was from the heat. His heart sank into his chest, and his stomach churned with that ever-present guilt. Why did he think the staff would fix everything? He was foolish, he realized. Everything in his world was too broken, just like his father's shattered leg, which, thanks to him, was now held together by pins, rods, and screws, and encased in a thick cast. He feared that it might never heal completely. With a deep sigh, Silas opened the closet, sliding the accordion door along its rusty hinges, and chucked the staff inside, where it landed with a thud next to the chest. Both were old, useless pieces of junk that once belonged to his aunt. That was where they belonged, in the closet, and forgotten. He slid the door shut. "Good riddance," he whispered to the staff. Then he fell into a restless sleep, filled with that same nightmare where he kept falling into blackness with no end and no bottom, while coyotes sang like frightened children to the dark night. He tossed and turned, drenched with sweat, soaking the sheets. He woke up with a start, crying out, "No, Dad, please don't fall." His voice came out a raspy whisper. He'd been reaching for his dad's hand to catch him, but he had been too late. His father slipped from his grasp and plunged into the abyss. It took him a moment to come back to the present and realize that it was only a terrible dream. It was still the middle of the night. "Lousy dream," Silas said, though he felt jittery and his heart still raced like he'd run a sprint. The room had grown horribly stuffy. He staggered over to the window and thrust it open again, letting in some fresh air. Then he flopped back down, hoping to return to sleep, when suddenly, eerie red light flashed, flooding his room. He sat up quickly, jerking his eyes back open. "What was that?" he hissed. But his room had fallen dark again. Right when he was about to lie back down, it happened once more, and this time he saw where it was coming from. The closet. The light leaked through the slats in the accordion door, casting an eerie glow across the floorboards. There was no mistaking it this time. It wasn't only in his imagination. Silas held his breath and waited for it to flash again, but nothing happened. Slowly, he crept out of bed, clutching his flashlight for protection. He triggered the beam, shining it around. He padded over to the closet and reached for the brass knob. The coyotes started howling again, louder and closer this time. It sounded like they were right outside his window. The wind blew even harder, and the curtains billowed open. Their voices yowled even louder now. Were they encouraging him or warning him? Silas wasn't sure, but their shrill cries sent his heart racing in overdrive again. And then another animal took up the nightly chorus, but this one sounded different. While the coyotes' calls reminded him of screaming children, this was more like cackling laughter. Hee 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 hee. That laughter was more than the coyotes screaming. What animal made that sound? Silas reached out and opened the closet door. He braced himself for, something. But the staff just lay there where he'd tossed it, next to the leather chest. He picked it up, examining it closer. Nothing about it seemed supernatural. It looked harmless. He waved the staff around for good measure. A deep growling noise emanated throughout the room. It was coming from inside the chest. "Stay back," Silas yelled, waving the staff around for protection. The guards bounced up and down. "I'm warning you, I have a magic staff." He shut his eyes, holding the staff in front of him, and cringed back. But he heard no animal emerge from the closet. Slowly, he peeled his eyes open. The closet was dark and silent. Even the coyotes and the strange laughing had fallen quiet, as if submitting to the apex predator in their midst. Silas relaxed a little. It had been a long day working in the hot sun, not to mention the nightmares. He was probably hearing and seeing things again. But then, the growling started up again. It was deep and sonorous and powerful. Had some creature snuck into the closet, chest in his closet? But that was impossible. The chest was locked. Not to mention that anything in there was for too long would suffocate to death. Silas thought about waking up his dad for help, but his father needed to rest and recover. "I have to be brave," he told himself. He remembered what his father said in their talk earlier. Bravery wasn't looking for danger, but what you did when danger came looking for you. Well, danger had found him. He tried to slow his racing heart and held the staff out for protection and approached the chest. It was still locked and shut tight. Next to the lock was the painted image of a baboon holding a staff that looked exactly like the one in his hands. That was when he got an idea. "Hakuna Matata," he said, touching the staff to the chest. He felt that jolt rush through the staff. Suddenly, as if it had cast a magic spell, the lock unfastened, and the chest sprang open. Silas couldn't believe his eyes. He started back. "Who's there?" Silas asked in a shaky voice, but nobody answered. He approached the chest slowly, holding out the staff, which had started to pulse with eerie red light, illuminating the closet. The closer he got to the chest, the brighter the staff grew. Bracing himself, he peered inside the chest, but it was empty, except for a dusty old lion pelt. The chest smelled musty and dank, like it hadn't been opened in a very long time. It made him sneeze all of a sudden. Once he recovered, he prodded the pelt with the staff, but it did nothing except release more dust into the air that made him sneeze again. Probably just something from his aunt's travels. He felt silly for thinking that it could be dangerous. He relaxed, still clutching the staff. The only strange thing he realized was the silence. The coyotes had stopped their howling. Usually they cried and sang all night long. Silas relaxed, but then a growl escaped from the chest, along with a huff of warm breath, almost like the pelt was breathing. Then slowly, with each breath, the pelt started to inflate and grow into the shape of a huge leonine creature with sharp teeth and claws, a thick dark mane, and worst of all, glowing green eyes. They fixed on Silas and then narrowed to slits. It growled low and menacingly, and then the ghostly lion spoke in an unusual voice. It was sultry and accepted and quite proper. "Oh, goody. Someone finally released me."